Sure, I agree with you. Can I switch gears?
Yeah.
I got to ask you about
Fuck
something.
yeah. Ask me about anything.
Joey Diaz. Tell me everything. How did you meet Joey Diaz? Because then I want you to ask me this. I want you to ask me what my experience with Joey. But how did you meet him? How did he come into the fold?
I met Joey Diaz in the late 90s at the Comedy Store. I think I met him in like 96 or 97, something like that. Right when Joey moved to L.A. We just started hanging around the Comedy Store. We became friends. And then I started taking him on the road with me, like the late 90s.
Okay.
And we've been best friends forever.
So I know of Joey. I don't know Joey. I've never met him.
You never met Joey?
Never.
I'll call him up right now.
TV and the whole bit, and I know him from you, and I see your podcast and all that. And he's in the circles. He does some jiu-jitsu. And he's funnier than hell, and he's a gangster, so I like him. But I don't know anything about him. So he comes on my podcast. Now he has a podcast, so of course my opening line to him is, "Hey, how'd you get into podcast?" Right? I'm going to put here's your plug for your podcast, and we're going to go on and talk about my agenda. So I say to him, Joey, how'd you get into podcasting? His response, Chael Sonnen, he wouldn't call me Chael. It was always, what, Chael Sonnen?
He still calls me Joe Rogan.
I mugged a hooker down in New Jersey and set her wig on fire. It's okay, there's two moving parts here. First off, I don't know how that answers my question of how, but now I need to know the story here. So he ties it all together with, he went on something, he got an appearance. He told the story of mugging a hooker in New Jersey and setting her wig on fire. And all of a sudden he blew up overnight. He goes, I realized people like those stories. I never knew that I had stories. From the part of the country I'm in the neighborhood I grew up in, I thought everybody had these stories. He's like, Chael Sonnen, I thought I'd tell you I mug a hooker and light her wig on fire. You go, yeah, well, I mugged 10 hookers and lit 10 wigs on fire. He's like, I didn't know I had stories. And then it just goes from there. And he starts telling me about... So he ends up doing 2 years or 18 months. And I said, well, what kind of jam did you get in there? And he said, well... I was doing the cop's job for him. The cops don't want drugs on the streets. I went and took 2 kilos off the streets for him. This is how he presents it to me. And he goes, yeah, the 2 kilos wasn't as big of a deal. Oh, he said, so I robbed 2 kilos. He goes, and you know what else, Chael Sonnen? I just happen to have a machine gun. And I go, well, I can see where that happened. He goes, yeah, sometimes you just back into a machine gun. I had a machine gun with me. And he goes, but it's funny, I wasn't in trouble for the gun. I really wasn't in that much trouble for the drugs. What they were upset about was the kidnapping. I'm going, okay, what happened here? This is my intro to the guy. I'm like, what in the hell is this story? You probably know the story, but I didn't. So he tells me the whole story, and he says, yeah, but kidnapping's kind of a weird charge. He goes, when you and Vandalay got in that scuffle in The Ultimate Fighter, if I come and grab you and I take you into the next room just to cool you down, taking you into a room against that's kidnapping. So I think like they got him on a technicality jam, like what they're doing with Frank Mir or some of these guys we're talking about. And I said, okay, is that what happened? And he goes, no, I duct taped the guy. He was in my trunk, and then I held him in the house for a week before I let him go. I'm like, well, then why did you tell me? Why did you bring up the initial example of taking me next door and cooling me down? What'd that have to do? I still don't know.
Because he's crazy.
It's funnier than hell. And I asked, so I was trying to talk like I try to do more of a Joe Rogan experience. You're my idol. I try to do my show the way you do yours, but I'm not there yet. It takes a while to build that audience. So I got to stick on MMA and pro wrestling. I got to really stay in, but I don't want that. I want to just talk.
Well, you could just talk. You definitely could just talk.
Well, as I bring these guys in, I'm trying to do a little more of that. I go to TMZ, I see the local stuff. I try to ask them pop culture questions. So I dip my toe in politics with Joey. Obama had just made this new rule of go in any bathroom you want. So I asked Joey about that, and he goes, Chael Sonnen, I've been taking a dump in the woman's bathroom since I'm 5 years old. And believe me, I have dealt with the consequences. But he wasn't kidding. Joe, that's what's so funny, man. This guy, it's a shoot. He's being real, and he tells me,
shoot. He used pro wrestling
lingo.
He
goes, well, my mom used to own a restaurant, so, I kind of I cleaned the bath, then I'd sit down in the women's. He goes, you know what happens if you drop your Coke on a men's bathroom floor? No, I don't know, Joe. I don't do Coke. What? And I've tested positive for everything in the world, but Coke wasn't one of them. And he says, you leave it there. You know what happens if I drop my Coke on a women's bathroom floor? You get down and lick it up. That's what he says. But he's trying to say the women's room's cleaner. He's been using them since he's 5 years old. And he said, and I have dealt with the consequences, which I knew. I want the answer to what those were. It's like there's too many other things to talk to this guy. But I got to get back to the hooker with the wig that he mugged.
I've known Joey
so I was busy.
20 years, and he's never stopped running out of stories. and they're all real.
Yeah.
Like people, his life is so fucking crazy that people go, oh, that guy just comes on your show and makes stuff up. That's what people used to say when I used to have him on. They used to say, like, when we first started doing the podcast, you're like, I'm tired of that Joey Diaz guy. He's lying. He's just making things up. Haters would say that. But then people would come on his show and substantiate. He would call people up in New Jersey that he grew up with. They would tell, and he would go, tell them that fucking story about the time we lit the hooker's wig on fire. And then they would tell the same story. Like, he's lived a movie. Like not a movie, like an epic adventure series of novels. Like his life is insane.
Well, to qualify, so he tells this story about robbing this guy with a machine gun that he just happened to have, taking the 2 kilos off the street, doing the cop's job for him, but then having the guy in his trunk duct tape before he moved him to the house before he let him go. He had that guy on his podcast.
Yes.
He found him on social media, tried to friend him or like him or whatever you call it on Facebook. I'm a Twitter guy, but this was Facebook. Guy ignored him for about 2 years and finally responded. Now, Joey's had him on his podcast. He says we catch up about once a month.
That's
and he goes,
hilarious.
yeah, and the guy was good people. He never turned me in. He said it was my partner in the whole thing. The partner tried to double cross me. We stole the coke, then he was going to steal it from me, but I knew what time it was. Now that's an expression I'd never heard before, but I plan to take with me through my next years in life. Whenever you, I knew what time it was. I just thought that was a great line. The whole thing was great. I asked him about the gorilla. The gorilla had just got shot where they killed him at the zoo.
Yeah.
And he says, you know what, Chael Sonnen, they don't give us the good gorillas. I'm down at the zoo last week. The gorillas, they got their hair messed up. They don't eat bananas. They want chicken cutlets. Shoot the effing gorilla. And it's like, you had no idea I was going to ask you that. That was so spontaneously funny. You know, that news had just broke. And right then I was like, this is the guy. This is a funny guy.
No, he's unbelievable. He's the funniest person I've ever met in my life. He's the funniest comedian I've ever seen in my life.
Well, I've never seen him live.
You got to see him live.